Well, I want to introduce myself really quick. So I'm Lucas Stuber. I'm a speech language pathologist representing DiscoverAAC, also the CEO of a company called LanguageCraft, which creates augmented communication tools and has a private practice here in Portland, Oregon. And I'm really excited to be speaking with you today, Julius. If you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Julius Sweetland. I'm a software developer from London, and I wrote OptiKey recently and released it on the internet.
Great. So this is a really interesting sort of professional circumstance, because I just sort of recreationally was on the forum website Reddit and saw that this was the top post, and had this moment of sort of shock of, my industry, it tends to be pretty closed. There's not a ton of people working in this space, and to see something new just pop up like that really was remarkable. So I'd love to hear, I guess the story of why you did what you did, I guess where you're coming from in the space.
Yeah, sure. I mean, to lay the groundwork, I'm not in this industry at all. I'm a financial software developer. This is a hobby. You're probably going to confuse me with lots of industry speak. I'm just going to nod along generally. So this project has sort of been born out of the fact that about 4.5 years ago, an aunt of mine, she died from MND, motor neuron disease, which you guys typically refer to as ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, don't you?
Sure.
So one thing that struck me over that process was that the tools she had as she sort of lost the ability to control her body and communicate were, I want to put this kindly, as lacking. We don't have necessarily the same problems in the UK with sort of medical insurance and being able to get at these things that maybe other parts of the world do have, but
Right.
Still the tools that were made available to her, they left me a little bit disappointed. And it was my first experience with MND. It was the first experience seeing what people in these sort of situations are given to help them. And I left this thing thinking there's got to be something a little bit better. There's got to be something out there that's better, or that maybe I could do that could improve this.
Great. So when you say lacking, I mean, what was there anything specifically that you felt like wasn't provided to her that should have been?
No, I don't want to criticize the care she was given, because the MNDA in the UK actually did a fantastic job. And my dad was a lot closer to this situation than I was, but he has nothing but good things to say. It's just, as an outsider, he's sort of watching this from the fence. I just thought she was given a physical device to type with. And she was a professional typist, but it just seemed primitive at the time. And so I went away and I thought, well, maybe we could do a bit better. And I investigated what was out there. And, there is some cool stuff on the market, but what I kept banging into over and over again was it's crazy expensive. And it's not really, I don't know, it never struck me as particularly fair when you see that something's got a price tag of sort of $15,000-$20,000. And you suddenly think, well, the audience it's not a rich guy buying a toy. This is someone who needs to be able to communicate with the people around them. So yeah, I didn't really like what I saw, and it sort of set this thing in motion, and it cemented it a little bit in my head that I had to sort of finish it once I got started as well.
Great. That's brilliant. That's a fantastic answer. And I think you nailed on one of the really key points that's not even necessarily just specific to the industry of augmentative communication, but healthcare in general, is that it is, this is a population that has no choice but to partake of what is out there, right? I mean, we sort of have to buy what's available at whatever price point it's available at. And that can be a danger. And it's, I think, an ethical responsibility too for us as developers to make sure that we're, being conscientious about what we charge and who we charge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there is something that I'd like to sort of caveat that with, which is, especially the Reddit posts, there's a lot of people saying that it's fiercely unfair what these companies are charging, and how dare they, sort of thing. And I don't take that approach at all. I mean, I do understand they're businesses, and this is a business, and they've spent 25 years producing this technology, and they've got R&D costs that go along with that. So I get it. These things in the beginning cost $30,000-$40,000 to make.
Right.
They don't now, and the landscape's changed, and that's where I think this competition is going to be healthy for everyone.
Right. That's perfect. Yeah, we're definitely on the cusp, I think, of a potential renaissance in a variety of technology areas because of the ability of people to sort of hop in, right, at a lower barrier to entry in terms of price.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I definitely echo what you said, that a lot of R&D has gone into this. There are companies like Dynavox, Tobii, PRC that have been doing this for 35 years. And
I'm going to pretend I didn't hear any industry names. I'm not interested.
Never mind. I won't say anything. That's fantastic. So tell me, tell me about OptiKey. Like, what differentiates it?
To be honest, I'm not even qualified to answer that question.
Okay.
What I wrote was what I'd want to use, and I didn't spend a lot of time referring to other things. And that sounds very amateurish from my point of view, because if you start a project and you're going to create something, one thing you should do is your market research. But knowing from very early on that this wasn't going to be a charging product and this wasn't a profiteering exercise, I didn't really do any of that. So I watched a few videos and I saw roughly how these things worked, and then I just sat down and had to think, well, if it was me, if my body was letting me down and I was sitting in front of this PC, what would I want? And that's it. And I've made some huge user experience mistakes, and I've sort of gone back and I've unpicked them and tried again, and I'm still doing it now. I mean, OptiKey, when I released it on the internet, it's at version 2, which doesn't mean anyone's really seen version 1. I think my audience is like 50 people for version 1. But version 2 sort of sourced out a lot of mistakes, and this evening on the train on the way home, I've sort of pinned down what I think I'm going to do in version 3. So it's an evolving thing.
Great. So what do you see then as the future? Like who do you want to be using this, and where do you see it in a year?
Okay, so the most important thing for me is that it gets in front of the intended users. It's the people with MND and ALS, any other sort of disease or limitation that means that you have to, you can't use a physical mouse or keyboard. I want people to understand that there are alternatives coming through, and it's not just OptiKey. It's other pieces of software like Click to Speak that came out. I want to say a year ago. Galson's excellent piece of software. That's worth checking out. And there are other things. I mean, there's a Russian guy on a forum that's written this mouse control tool, and he's just done it for his friend. And there are things that I'm sure a lot of people who, when they're struggling to come to terms with their diagnoses and all the medical stuff that's going on around them, that these things aren't front and center in front of them, and I think they need a bit of help finding them.
Right. Yeah, well, and I think that's particularly true with things like motor neuron disease, where there's so much else going on that's not just about the communication, right? That there's sort of, I think, a hierarchy of what needs to be resolved, and it may not be the first thing in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people are redoing their houses and things like that. So playing on the computer is maybe not the top of their list.
It always is for me, although not.
No, me too. Yeah.
Maybe not for financial software. See, I'd be way more stumped in your world. Okay. If you had, I don't know, I guess one piece of advice, like going just even from the family perspective, if you had, if you were speaking with a family that had a family member with a new diagnosis of motor neuron disease, what would be your soundbite there?
That's a difficult question.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm not massively comfortable being the voice of the community that's meant to be helping these people. But I mean, me personally, I don't know. Firstly, get in touch with the big agencies in whatever country you're in. So in the UK, it's the MNDA. In the States, you've got ALS Worldwide. You've got ALS, other charities and big organizations. Get in touch. There's huge support networks. Get online. There's forums. You'll speak to other people with the same experiences, and they'll hold your hand. And to be honest, that's one of the best resources I found in the last 6 months. It's reading the stories of the people who have the disease and understanding sort of how it impacts them day to day.
Great.
Yeah, that's
great.
Where I'd start.
Yeah, I think that's finding the community of support, I think, can be such a critical piece. Well, this is really fascinating for me. I'm also, I'm a speech language pathologist, obviously, by trade, and I've been around for a bit, but I'm also sort of entering into this industry on this sort of new evolutionary slope that we just spoke to, of how there's this lower barrier to entry for development, and now sort of I on my own or you on your own can do these things. We do, at my clinic, we do ad hoc assistive technology with like Arduino boards and Play-Doh, and we can make fun stuff for kids. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But I'm really curious to see what's going to happen in the next, 5 to 10 years, because I feel like we have simultaneously a great opportunity, but also great responsibility, I think, to maybe do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing I'd like to see is sort of more even amateur organizations that are trying to control the development of these new technologies, because it's cool when there's guys like you and me who are out there playing and making little things. But really, if there was someone guiding us, we could achieve a lot more, I'm sure.
That's an interesting thought. Okay. Well, do you have any questions for me?
What do you think of OptiKey?
I think it's brilliant. I think it's great. I mean, I think that there are a lot of I mean, it's you've entered into a space where there are similar things, right? But there are a relative poverty, I think, of open source things, a relative poverty of things that are multimodal, meaning like we could use it with Windows, right? There's a huge emphasis on iOS and Android development right now, but having stuff that's not just in that space is, I think, really critical. And then another piece is that much of the see, now I'm talking too much, and I should muzzle myself, but
no, that's all.
you know, some of the open source solutions that are out there, like Gay Speaker would be a really great example of this, you know, are simply old, right? And the people that originally developed them may not be motivated anymore to continue development. And so that's another reason I think why it's important to have fresh ideas enter the market and sort of press forward what's going on, not only with open source, but also in the commercial market.
Yeah,
so I think that's great. And, you know, from my end too, I got to say, I really appreciate the fact that your post ended up where it did on Reddit, which is a funny thing to say in a an interview in our industry. Like people watching this probably won't have any idea what Reddit is, but you know, that it's raising awareness around something that is a real niche technologist sort of field, but that has enormous potential to impact people's lives.
Yeah, and the response from that has just been phenomenal. I did not expect that in any way, but the doors it's opening and the avenues that are sort of being put in front of me to work with awesome people and interesting ideas, and it's just great. I mean, right now, like literally right now, there's 20 guys on a website translating the whole of OptiKey into about 10, 15 different languages.
Awesome.
So there's some great stuff happening.
Great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you speaking with me. Again, Julius from OptiKey, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Lucas.